Making your first enamel pins as an artist can be intimidating, expensive, and it's hard to know where to start. So in this video, I'm going to take you through the entire process for how I made my first enamel pins and how you can make yours too. First off, I'm going to be mostly using these examples of my Life Series enamel pin series that I made a few months ago. I've also done a couple other enamel pin projects like this one that I did for Team Technoblade a while back, but I'm mostly going to be using these ones as the example. The first thing you're going to need to do is obviously draw the art. When I initially made these Life Series stained glass drawings, they were for keychains and stickers. They were not for enamel pins, so they weren't perfectly optimized the way that you would initially want enamel pins to be. But basically, whatever art you're going to be turning into pins, you need to draw the art first. For these, I went through the entire sketching process, refinement, inking, coloring, all of these different things, and now we're finally going to be turning these into enamel pins. First off, after you actually draw the thing, you need to optimize it for enamel pins, and there's a couple steps you need to take to do that. When you have the art, you're going to first need to narrow down the colors. For most enamel pins, they're going to charge you per color that you have in that. So for all of these pins, I narrowed down the colors to 10 or less. This just made it so it was a lot easier and it was a lot cheaper for me to make these enamel pins. The next thing that you're going to need to do is match every single color in your enamel pins to a Pantone color. Pantone colors are basically like when you go to a paint store and you're going to see all these paint swatches and they're going to have a name and a number. And basically Pantone colors is just this new paint guide that's a universally agreed on. When we say the color red 40, this is the exact color that we're talking about. You can get a paint guide book for like $200 and something online, the Pantone color guide formula, but that can be a little bit expensive, so I did not actually do this. I just went to Pantone's website and you can match RGB or hex code or just a color wheel picker to get the colors that most closely match. You're going to need the Pantone color for every single color in your enamel pin, so you can pass this along to your manufacturer so they know exactly what color you're getting. Even if you guys are using different software, different screens, you're going to have pretty much the same color either way. After you have all of the Pantone colors figured out, you are then going to need to actually vectorize the art. Some manufacturers will do this for you, but basically you can't really send them just raster art and turn that into a pin and a mold. You're going to need a vector file. You can do this through something like Adobe Illustrator. You can do this through something like Affinity Designer. Affinity is free, but I ended up using Illustrator for these since I had a subscription at the time, though I do not any longer, so I'll probably use Affinity in the future. But regardless of what way you're doing it, you're going to want to have all of your colors separate from your line art. So then you can have the line art that they can turn into the mold, and then the colors that they can turn into the enamel filling later on. Another important thing to note is that there are two main kinds of enamel pins. There are going to be hard enamel, which is like this. It's all raised, it's all smooth, it's all level, and there's also going to be soft enamel, where the gold is a little bit more raised up from the enamel coloring. There's not one specific pin design that's better, it just depends what it is that you're trying to make. I've ended up making both of these, and they both look really nice in my opinion. Now, once you have finished getting everything vectorized, and you have all the line art, you have all the Pantone colors and everything, you're going to need to make something like this so that you can share it with your manufacturer. You're going to need the sizing, you're going to need a back stamp if you're having one of those on your pins, you're going to show what color and what design of clutches you want. You basically just every piece of information that somebody would need to make an enamel pin, you need to have it. They need to see the line art, they need to see the colors, the Pantones, the back stamp, and the enamel pin clutches. Once you have all of these, you can start looking for a manufacturer and getting price quotes. Now, looking for a manufacturer is kind of one of the harder parts of getting enamel pins made because there are hundreds, if not thousands of them out there. Almost all of these are going to be based out of China since the technology for it doesn't really exist in the factories in the US, since this is what we use to make a lot of our currency, so these aren't really commercially available factories, so you're going to have to work with somebody in China for this. If you see an enamel pin company that's claiming to be a US manufacturing company for enamel pins, they're probably not actually making the pins in the US. They are just a middleman company working directly with a Chinese factory, and you're just going to end up paying a lot more because you're paying this middleman company and you're paying for the actual manufacturing cost. So unless you feel very intimidated by reaching out to somebody in China, then it's better to just reach out to them directly and not go through one of these middlemen. So how do you actually find these manufacturers? There are a couple different ways. You can find middlemen companies that are based out of China that will work with the manufacturers for you through something like Fograce, or you can go and find them directly yourself through something like Alibaba, which is a little bit like this website that has access to all of these different manufacturers. You can reach out to them, you can get quotes, and you can communicate and pay them directly through Alibaba's site. You also have some buyer protection through there as well, so it's not just randomly sending your money to some sketchy company. If you don't want to go digging for these manufacturers, you can also just go onto Instagram or whatever social media you have and just start posting about how you're designing enamel pins and you're looking for enamel pin manufacturers, because I guarantee you they will come in droves to your DMs and your comments telling you all about the enamel pins that they could make for you. Doesn't matter how many times you post, they will find you. This is how I ended up getting quotes from a lot of different manufacturers, although my final recommendation actually came from a friend and I decided to go with this one. Now, you might just be asking, okay, well, if you have a manufacturer, can't you just share that one with us? Like, can we ask in your comments and you'll just give us a manufacturer? Well, actually, not really. There are a lot of reasons why an artist might choose not to share their manufacturer with you, but at the end of the day, it's up to the artist. If they don't want to share their hard-earned business secrets with you, then they really don't have to. You can put in the effort and put in the work and go and find your own. But why might they not share it with you? First off, if a manufacturer gets more popular, if they get more well-known, they're going to start getting more orders. If they get more orders, that means that their lead times are going to go up, so it's going to take longer for artists to get their enamel pins. Their quality also might start going down as they have more and more orders to keep up with. So basically, the more people who know about your manufacturer, the longer it's going to take to get pins. The pins might get more expensive, and they just might be lower quality. So a lot of artists just don't really want to share that information. A lot of the time, too, if an artist shares their pin manufacturer, there's no guarantee that you will also have a good experience with them. Maybe they work for this artist, but they might not work for you. So if you have a bad experience, the artist just really doesn't want to get blamed for it. For me personally, I wasn't super thrilled with the manufacturer I ended up using. I obviously don't blame my friend at all for it. She had a great experience, so it's like just a fluke that I kind of didn't, but I had about a 70% defect rate for some of my pins, which is absurdly high, especially after they guaranteed me that they could keep me between 5 and 10% defect rate. And while they did end up remaking for free all of the pins that they had messed up, it still wasn't a super great experience, and it pushed things back several weeks in my fulfillment time. So regardless of what manufacturers other artists are using, it's always good to do your own research and also get samples made, which is the next thing that I want to talk about. For whatever manufacturer you decide on using, it is always a good idea to get at least one sample made. This way you can see how well your colors translate over, you can see if their quality is good, how good they are at communication, if the payment for the sample, everything goes through properly. It's just a great way to make sure that everything is going smoothly. Because if everything doesn't go smoothly for one pin, how is it going to go smoothly when you're making hundreds, if not thousands of pins? Once you actually get the sample, you can start looking at it to make sure that everything looks good. For any enamel pin that you're making, I would recommend getting at least one shipped to you if you can. That way you can check everything out in person. But at the very least, you want to make sure that you can get all the colors looked at and verified for one sample per pin design before you actually go and make dozens, if not hundreds, of that design. For the enamel pins that I made for these Life Series pins, I got one physical sample made before I paid them for everything else, and once I was happy with that one, looking it over in person and being able to physically hold it and see it, then I went and paid them for the rest of the pins, and they made me all of the rest of them. Before they mass-produced them, they also did one color sample for every single one, so that I could verify that all of the Pantone colors looked correct and make any adjustments that I needed to, which ended up happening a couple times that I just needed to tweak a few of the colors, since again, things will look different in person than they do in your Pantone color guide. Now, for enamel pins, it is pretty common that they're going to have some amount of defect rate. No matter how many you're making, you're going to have some that are flawed. A good ratio for this is between 5 to 15%. Anything higher than this, you might want to have your manufacturer remake them for you. And if they're a good manufacturer, they should really be doing it for free. Unless you're being super, super picky about your pins, in which case there's always going to be some flaws. There's nothing really that you can do about that. You just have to learn which manufacturers have better defect rates and which ones you're more willing to work with. Now, something important to note for enamel pins is that you are always going to have to get a lot of them made. A lot of manufacturers will have a minimum of 50 to 100 minimum pins you need to order for each design. This is largely because of the mold fee. Now, for every design that you're going to make, you have to make a custom mold for it, since you are working with metal and you have to pour that into custom molds. A mold fee for enamel pins is generally going to be about $50 to $100, depending on how complex and how large the mold is. For every enamel pin itself, it's going to be a couple dollars, again, depending on how large it is. These ones were a couple dollars each to make, with I think about a $60 or $80 mold fee. Although these ones were 3-inch pins, so they were pretty large, and they were a little bit detailed as well, since they did have a lot of enamel colors in them. Something else that's worth noting, your cost is going to go up according to a couple different factors. You're going to pay more per pin depending on how big it is, sometimes how complex the metalwork is, how many colors you're using, if you're doing a back stamp on the back or not, how many clutches you're doing on the back, and whether or not you're doing screen printing. For enamel pins, every color needs to be contained within its own separate area, or they're not going to be able to fill it properly. If you want to overlay colors without the metal in between each one, then you can do something called screen printing. These pins are from my friend Sky Gold Art, and she did a lot of screen printing on these because she wanted to layer colors in this certain way. It's a little bit more expensive, but for some designs, it can really be worth it. Once you actually get all of the enamel pins made and you're happy with how they're looking in the photos the manufacturer's sending to you, which hopefully they're sending you photos, then you're going to get all of the pins. The shipping can be a little bit expensive and sometimes take a little bit since they are shipping from China to wherever you live. I'm in the US, obviously, so it's going to take a little bit to get here. But once you actually get all of them, then you need to grade them. It is worth noting that not every pen is going to be perfect, but again, you want that 5 to 15% defect rate. But you are going to want to look out for things like underfilled or overfilled enamel, metal that's not quite in the right places, colors that were miscolored and aren't looking correct, or just other general things that you would look at a pen and think, that's not how it's supposed to look. Every artist is going to grade their pens differently, but ultimately it just depends on how precise and how perfect you want your pens to look. So at this point, you should have all of your enamel pins made. This process was something that took several months, from actually illustrating the artwork over several weeks, to finding a manufacturer, to getting everything made for the samples with the Pantones and everything, to actually finally getting all of the enamel pins in hand. I put all these on backing cards, which are made out of custom game cards that I had manufactured, but a lot of artists will also use custom business cards as well. There's not really a need to do this, I just think it makes it look a little bit more professional. If you have any other questions about how to make enamel pins, feel free to drop those questions in the comments and I will try to help you out as best I can. If you found this video helpful, make sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you all next time.